Okay, so if you've ever felt completely stuck trying to learn English grammar, then this is for you. We're going to break down a totally fresh approach that basically flips the old classroom method on its head. And it all boils down to one simple, powerful idea. What if the real secret to fluency isn't about studying more, but speaking more? Let's dive right in. I mean, you probably wouldn't expect to hear that from someone who, literally wrote a guide on grammar, right? But this one little confession, it gets right to the heart of the problem. It shows exactly what's wrong with how grammar is usually taught, and it sets the stage perfectly for a pretty radical new way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? If grammar books are the problem, if they're the thing that makes people freeze up, then why in the world would you create another one? Well, that's the big question, and we're about to figure it out.
So here's the real issue, the thing at the very center of it all. Traditional grammar lessons, they often end up being a huge barrier. They create this hesitation, this fear of making a mistake. And that fear stops us from doing the one single thing that actually works, the thing that leads to real fluency, which is just speaking.
Okay, so what really matters when you're out there in the real world trying to communicate? It's not perfect grammar, not by a long shot. It really boils down to just a few key things: simple sentences, some solid practical words, and most importantly, confidence. All of that is just in service of one goal: clarity, just being understood. That is the real key.
Now, to really get this, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. See, English has changed. It's not just some academic subject you study in a classroom anymore. It's become this global tool. Millions of people, non-native speakers, are using it to connect with each other every single day. And well, that changes everything.
And this chart, it just lays out the disconnect perfectly. On one side, you've got academic English, which is all about chasing perfection, complexity, memorizing all the rules. But on the other side, you have real-world English, the English used in business and travel everywhere. And what does it prioritize? Clarity, confidence, simplicity. These are two totally different games with completely different goals.
This simple idea is an absolute game changer. So many of us, when we're learning, we try to sound advanced or academic. But the truth is, in a global conversation, that can actually make things more confusing. The real goal, the new gold standard, it's just being understood. That's it.
So this new reality, it demands a completely new philosophy for learning. We have to stop treating speaking like it's the final exam, the big scary test at the end. Instead, we need to start seeing it as the practice field. It's the gym. It's where you get your reps in. It's the place where the real learning actually happens. And what I love about this is how it totally flips the roles. The teacher isn't a lecturer anymore. They're more like a guide, a support system. But your role as the learner, well, that changes completely. It's all about being active. You're the one talking, expressing ideas, asking questions. The spotlight shifts from just passively listening to actively doing.
And boom, there it is. This right here is probably the single most powerful idea in this whole philosophy. It challenges pretty much everything we were ever taught in school, right? We're told you study for years so that one day you can speak. But this says, no. You speak in order to learn. The act of trying, of putting words together, that is what builds the skill. That's what makes it stick.
So this brings us right back to that first question. Why even have a book? And the answer is, it's not a textbook you're supposed to memorize. Think of it more like a tool, a simple, friendly guide to have your back when you get stuck or feel a little uncertain. It's like a pit stop in a race, It's there to help you get back on the track, not to be the track.
All right, so this all sounds great in theory, right? Just speak. But how do you actually do that? I mean, you can't just ignore grammar completely, can you? Well, you don't have to. The answer is to be strategic, and we do that by using this incredibly powerful idea called the Pareto Principle. For our purposes, let's just call it the 80-20 grammar rule.
So here's the basic idea, and once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. It's that a small number of things usually creates the biggest results. Think about it. When it comes to language, it means that a tiny, tiny fraction of all the grammar rules you could learn are the ones that do like 99% of the work in real everyday conversations.
And this visual just makes it so obvious. Look at that little 20% slice. That is your target. That's the gold mine. If you can just get comfortable with that core stuff, you're pretty much set for like 80% of any real-life conversation you'll ever have. So that other huge 80% chunk of complex, weird rules, you're barely ever going to need it.
So why would you ever start there? It makes no sense.
This is it. This is the number, 20%. Just focus on the small, high-impact stuff. That's the whole secret to learning smarter, not harder. It's all about strategic focus, not just trying to memorize everything. I really love this idea. Because normally, hearing that something is incomplete sounds like a bad thing, right? A weakness. But in this system, it's actually its greatest strength. It's a deliberate choice. By intentionally ignoring that giant chunk of grammar you barely ever need, you free up all your brain power to master the small part that actually gets you talking.
Okay, so let's get down to the most important part. How do you actually use this method? What does it look like day to day? Let's break down the practical steps so you can actually make this philosophy work for you starting today. All right, so your to-do list is all about action. It's about building momentum. Notice what's happening here. You read an explanation, maybe just once, then you immediately get active. You do the exercises, and the most crucial part, you speak out loud whenever you can. The whole goal is just to keep moving forward, not get stuck on one little rule.
Now, this might be even more important. Your to-ignore list. This is basically giving you permission to let go of all the stuff that causes the most stress for language learners. Forget about advanced grammar for now. Don't worry about those weird, rare exceptions. And please let go of perfection. That's the stuff that makes you hesitate. The 80-20 rule says you can just let it go.
So let's be super clear about what we're actually trying to achieve here. The goal isn't to get a perfect score on a grammar test. No way! The real goal is to change how you feel and what you do. It's about feeling more confident. It's about cutting down that little pause, that hesitation before you speak. You use the grammar stuff as a quick support, and then you get right back to the main event, actually communicating.
And this quote just wraps it all up so perfectly. The promise was never about achieving perfect grammar. I mean, that's just a recipe for stress, and it's basically impossible anyway. The real promise is something so much better, so much more useful. It's about getting the support you need to become what you really want to be, a clear and confident communicator.
So, we'll leave you with this question. Which path really sounds better to you? The endless, frustrating search for perfection, or the practical, powerful path to just communicating with confidence? Because this whole approach is built on one simple belief. Real progress doesn't begin when you finally feel perfect. It begins the exact moment you decide to open your mouth and just speak.